Hi, I'm Robert Dutt for ChannelBuzz.ca here at the Waterloo, Ontario offices of Auvik Networks with Alex Hoff. Alex, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for coming by.
Wanted to talk a little bit about some research you did on sort of the state of network administration and the value that MSPs play in the role of network administration. Perhaps to throw it open, could you just kind of share some of the top line findings of the research you did on the state of the network, as it were?
Yeah, for sure. So we had done a bunch of research with IT professionals in what we call the mid-market and down. And so what we're talking about is the MSP's clients, so the actual end users today. And you know, when you step back a second and say, well, what is IT? It's a discipline. It's a whole bunch of different functions, whether it be servers, desktops, network. But generally speaking, the network is underrepresented. The skills are just not there, or the time really, to be able to put the effort into it. So, you know, at Auvik, we look at networking and say, well, this whole space, it's network operations, it's a discipline. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll go into that you have to do to not put your corporation at risk. So, you know, I got my facts here, but, you know, one of the big things that we saw was most people just lacked confidence. They just didn't believe in their networks. A third of all people said, well, you know, they don't feel confidence in the network. So what does that mean to the rest of the organization? If they're not trusting that guy and that guy doesn't trust it, well, what does that really mean? How are they going to handle an outage? And I like to say that it's going to fail sometime. Hardware fails. It's just a fact of life. So what's going to happen? What are you going to do about that when that occurs? One of the other big ones was, you know, as part of that disaster recovery story is when you make a change to the network, when something changes, a new access point comes in, a new switch, do you have the documentation? Do you have the configurations backed up? You go, oh yeah, you know, Joey's moving from this office to that office. I need to change a VLAN, for example. Did you back it up? What we found was that a quarter of all respondents in our survey actually never back up their switch document, you know, their switches. So if that switch dies, you're going to be left trying to figure out, well, what was it doing again? I got to swap out the gear, and I got to first scratch. But then it's not just configuring from scratch; it's remembering what did it do, what was the intent of the network, and I got to reverse engineer what it was doing now, not to actually just configure it. So that's that. You know, to us, that's like, well, these are things that can be easily automated. It's just best practices that can be put into software. Speaking of the network, another fact that we had was over half the companies didn't actually know what the network did. So what does that mean? One of my favorite anecdotes was, firewalls, the rules never shrink. They only ever grow, and most people have no idea what they're for. You know, and a simple analogy there is, you know, I was asked to open up a port for a demo I was doing, and then 2 weeks later, I'm like, what's this for? Well, I better not remove it because
Someone's using it somewhere.
Yeah, something. It's important. It's there, clearly. Not understanding the intent of what the network's doing, not having that documentation to really understand why it's there. It's, well, you know, again, how are you going to deal with change? How are you going to deal with failure? And that's really what we're trying to understand with our customer base, our clients, about, well, what is it you need to do to be running the network properly? What are the best practices, and what can we do to help you automate some of that work? Because there's a lot of work there. These guys are working overtime. They just don't have the tooling they need to keep up with it.
You provided some hints, I think, in there. But if I'm an MSP armed with this knowledge, you know, what can I do to help make sure my clients' networks are more thoroughly understood and properly configured, properly maintained?
So I think the most important thing when you first meet that client of yours, or whether it's an existing client and you want to do a better job, is, you know, ask them, like, what is this for? You have all these servers. I understand how they're configured, but what are the business functions? Yeah. Why are these here? Because I can move them to the cloud. You know, you're going to get cost savings, but I need to understand why, right? It's all about that intent of the network. You know, I see VoIP phones, but you have no QoS set up. Is there a reason for that? Is it working well? What's your your redundancy strategy? Like, I can look at the network, but I'm always going to be sitting back saying, as an MSP, I got to reverse engineer this. I've got to try and figure out what you were trying to do. So, yes, having the documentation, having that done automatically, the discovery, just making that work in kind of like 15 minutes, that'd be great. But then you still have to sit down with that team and really get to the bottom of, okay, what are your objectives? What business functions are you trying to support? Where are they running? Are they cloud-based? Are they on-prem? Let's understand that, and then we're going to do the best practices to support that. Again, whether that's deploying new configurations, whether it's just optimizing, adding new capacity, without knowing what to do, what you're using it for, I don't really know how to help you. So we want to, at Auvik, we help the managed service provider do all that grunt work of understanding the configurations, looking for potential problems, and then we let the MSP themselves show their value, which is their core expertise. They understand networking.
You mentioned off the top the idea that the network is sort of underrepresented in IT and in IT's concerns. Is that the case in the MSP world as well? And is there an opportunity for MSPs to kind of step up their networking game to make it a more important function of what they do, and how does that benefit them to do so?
Sure. So there's a couple of trends that we've seen. A lot of the MSPs, depending on how mature they are, some charge for it, some charge a lot for it, which is great. Some don't charge at all. And it's the ones that don't charge at all where you have to question where are they in the value chain. So you look at desktop management, backup, antivirus, those are all very end user visible things because you look at the network, it's very low level, it's supporting the business functions. My favorite analogy is networks like plumbing, right? When the plumbing works, great. When it doesn't work, everyone cares. And no one goes to their plumber and says, high five, thanks for doing a great job. And the same is true on the network. No one goes to the IT guy or the MSP and say, hey, my network's been working, I've got internet access, you're doing a great job. It's, no, I need to understand when it's not working, what do you do? I'm going to call you and call you and call you to make sure it's up and running. So running a good service provider business through managed network service is all about the discipline around network operations. It's putting the processes in place to understand what the network's doing, how it's configured, how it's documented, what's the inventory of devices, how old are they, what's the firmware, just really getting a good, clear picture about that, and not just doing it once, but it's an ongoing process. You need to be constantly monitoring for change. And so for managed service providers, it's really just taking hold of this opportunity, being able to sell your customers, saying, hey, you've got all these services that are on the cloud now. How what are we doing for you on the network? Here's a real opportunity where we can come in and make sure you're set up for success so that, when there's a failure, whether it be internet connection, the switches, the routers, when they go down, we're going to make sure you have the minimum loss in connectivity. So you're not reaching Salesforce. You do have that access. So that's kind of where we think that MSPs have a real revenue opportunity, either not only to grow the revenue, but also just to drive efficiency on what they're currently doing.
Great, and all this research is available on Auvik's website. We'll have a link to that for you right below this video. Some great resources, some stuff to help you maybe rethink what you're doing around network management and to better position the importance of network management to your customers. Alex, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.